The Young and the Restless Spoilers Fridays recap the 9th of January 2025. Billy Abbott had already begun to show the subtle, unsettling signs of a man losing something essential long before he was willing to name it. And Sally Spectre sensed that loss even if she could not yet articulate it without fear. The evidence was not found in dramatic confrontations or explosive arguments, but in a single, revealing confession Sally made to Victoria Newman during the holiday break. When defenses were lower and truths slipped out more easily, Sally admitted that she needed her relationship with Billy to be truly solid, not just emotionally meaningful or intellectually compatible, but unshakable. That sentence alone carried more weight than she likely realized at the time. People who feel secure do not speak in terms of necessity. They do not cling to the idea of stability as if it were a lifeline. They simply inhabit it. Sally's words did not come from confidence. They came from fear. She felt the ground shifting beneath her, the subtle erosion of trust and certainty, and she reached for Billy not out of joy but out of survival instinct. As if he were the last firm structure standing in an environment slowly collapsing around her. The tragedy was that Billy himself no longer knew how to be that structure. He moved through his days with the posture of a man who had quietly surrendered, not to an external enemy, but to the exhausting reality of endless battles he no longer believed he could win. Billy's internal withdrawal did not manifest as cruelty or neglect in obvious ways. Instead, it appeared as hesitation, as a dangerous kind of passivity that masqueraded as patience or strategic restraint. This was where everything began to rot from the inside out. Billy confided in Phyllis Summers that Jack Abbott had chosen to temporarily shelve plans to reclaim the stolen artificial intelligence program from Victor Newman, a decision that Billy framed as pragmatic but which reeked of avoidance. Billy advised Jack to keep his options open, to remain flexible, yet he himself took no decisive action. He waited. He stalled. He delayed. And in the world of Genoa City, hesitation was not neutrality. It was surrender. While Billy lingered in uncertainty, Abbott Communications became a sitting target, absorbing blow after blow from Victor Newman's carefully calibrated war machine. Victor did not attack recklessly. He applied pressure with surgical precision, exploiting every pause, every delay, every moment. Billy chose reflection over retaliation. To Victor, restraint was weakness, and Billy was bleeding influence by the hour. Sally watched this deterioration with growing alarm. Abbott Communications was not just a business venture to her. It was proof of her legitimacy, her reinvention, her escape from a past defined by instability and public humiliation. The launch was supposed to be her moment, a declaration that she belonged at the table with Genoa City's power players. Instead, Victor issued a calculated order to Adam Newman, instructing him to publish a brutal expose announcing the shutdown of Jabot at the exact moment Abbott Communications was celebrating its debut. The timing was not accidental. It was a statement. Victor wanted to remind everyone in that room who controlled the narrative, who dictated reality. What should have been Sally's crowning achievement became collateral damage in a feud Billy refused to fully engage in. The humiliation was not merely professional. It was deeply personal. Sally felt exposed, undermined, and sacrificed, and she responded with fury. That fury, however, was misdirected in ways that revealed uncomfortable truths. Sally aimed her anger squarely at Adam Newman, condemning him for acting as Victor's obedient instrument. On the surface, her outrage was justified. Adam had executed the attack flawlessly, without hesitation or remorse. But beneath the anger lay something far more dangerous: emotional entanglement. Rage directed at a former lover is rarely just about principle. It is about relevance. It is about the lingering awareness that the other person still occupies mental and emotional real estate. Sally's fixation on Adam, even in anger, meant that he still mattered, and that realization terrified her more than Victor's assault ever could. Adam represented decisiveness, ruthlessness, and a willingness to act without apology, everything Billy was no longer demonstrating. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Billy's refusal to confront Victor head-on did not come from cowardice in the traditional sense. It came from exhaustion, from years of cyclical warfare that had yielded only temporary victories and long-term losses. He told himself that stepping back was wisdom, that restraint was maturity, that not every provocation required retaliation. But leadership without action breeds resentment, especially among those who rely on that leadership for protection. Sally needed Billy to fight not because she craved chaos, but because she needed to know that he believed she and their shared future were worth defending at any cost. Every day Billy hesitated, every meeting he postponed, every plan he left unfinished reinforced Sally's growing fear that she was anchoring herself to a man already halfway gone. The emotional imbalance between them deepened quietly. Sally began to overcompensate, to articulate needs she should never have had to verbalize, to seek reassurance in indirect ways. Her conversation with Victoria was not a betrayal of Billy, but a confession of vulnerability. She was asking, without saying it outright, whether stability with Billy was still possible or whether she was clinging to an illusion. Victoria, perceptive as ever, recognized the subtext immediately. A relationship that requires constant validation is already under threat, not because love is absent, but because confidence has eroded. Sally felt it instinctively. She could sense Billy drifting, not toward another woman necessarily, but toward disengagement, which is far more lethal. Meanwhile, Victor continued to advance, emboldened by the lack of resistance. He understood Billy better than Billy understood himself. Victor knew that Billy's greatest weakness was not recklessness, but doubt. By escalating the attack on Abbott Communications and humiliating Sally in public, Victor forced Billy into a position where any response would feel reactive rather than strategic. And Billy, paralyzed by the fear of playing into Victor's hands, did exactly what Victor anticipated: nothing. The silence was deafening. It communicated to Sally, to the industry, and to Victor himself that Billy Abbott was no longer the adversary he once was. Sally's internal conflict intensified as she tried to reconcile her loyalty to Billy with the growing evidence that he could not or would not protect the life they were building. She wanted to believe in patience, in long-term strategy, in the idea that strength could exist without aggression. But every instinct she had honed through years of survival told her that in Genoa City, hesitation was fatal. Her anger at Adam was safer than confronting the truth about Billy, because blaming Adam preserved the illusion that the real enemy was external. Acknowledging Billy's emotional retreat would mean confronting the possibility that her relationship was fundamentally misaligned, that she was investing her future in a man who no longer had the will to fight for it. Billy, for his part, sensed the shift but misread its cause. He believed Sally was reacting to the stress of the business, to Victor's cruelty, to Adam's betrayal. He failed to see that her distress stemmed from him. His emotional absence was more destabilizing than Victor's aggression. By refusing to act, Billy inadvertently communicated that the loss of Abbott Communications, the public humiliation of Sally, and the erosion of their shared power were acceptable risks. To Sally, that message was devastating. She did not need Billy to win every battle. She needed him to show up to the war. The tragedy unfolding between them was not marked by explosive conflict, but by quiet misalignment, by conversations that circled around the truth without ever naming it, by shared spaces filled with unspoken disappointment. Sally stood at a crossroads she was not yet ready to admit existed. One path required continued patience, continued faith in a man who might never reclaim the decisiveness she admired. The other path required acknowledging that emotional safety cannot be built on hesitation, and that love alone is not enough when the world demands action. Billy, still trapped in his internal stalemate, remained unaware that by choosing not to fight Victor, he was already losing something far more precious than a business battle. He was losing Sally, not to another man necessarily, but to the growing realization that stability cannot survive in the shadow of surrender. New Year's Eve should have been the moment that finally pierced Billy Abbott's denial. The unmistakable warning sign that something vital was slipping through his fingers while he stood frozen in his own uncertainty. Adam Newman and Sally Spectra arrived together at Society, not as a calculated provocation, but as a consequence of paths that had quietly curved back toward one another. They reconnected in that charged, liminal space where the year was ending and defenses were naturally lowered. They talked. They laughed. They raised their glasses together as the clock struck midnight. Billy was nowhere to be found in that moment, and his absence spoke louder than any argument ever could. In a world where presence is power, where showing up is its own declaration of intent, Billy's silence and physical absence registered as retreat. Sally did not plan that night as a betrayal, but the emotional symbolism of it lingered long after the music faded. When the year turned, she was not standing beside the man who claimed to be building a future with her. She was standing beside the man who had once been her past and who now, disturbingly, embodied everything Billy no longer seemed willing to be. Sally's history with Adam is not something that can be neatly categorized or dismissed with a rational explanation. It was toxic, yes, fueled by obsession, manipulation, and power struggles that left scars on both of them. But it was also intense, passionate, and alive in a way that imprints itself deeply on memory. Some relationships do not fade quietly into irrelevance. They lie dormant, waiting for the right emotional conditions to resurface. Sally could tell herself she had moved on, that maturity and self-respect had carried her into a healthier chapter with Billy. But emotional truth does not always align with intellectual resolution. When Billy began withdrawing emotionally, when he stopped engaging in the battles that mattered to her, that dormant history stirred. Sally did not seek Adam out because she missed chaos. She gravitated toward him because he represented motion. While Billy processed and reflected and hesitated, Adam acted. The contrast could not have been sharper. Adam Newman was operating fully within his element, running Newman Media with precision and aggression, executing Victor Newman's directives without hesitation. He was visible, decisive, and unapologetically powerful. He was doing things, making moves, shaping narratives, even when those actions directly harmed Sally. Billy, by comparison, was feeling things. He was introspective, cautious, emotionally burdened by the weight of past failures and future consequences. In any other context, that emotional awareness might have been a strength. In Genoa City, at this moment, it was a liability. Sally needed a partner who could meet force with force, who understood that restraint without leverage is not wisdom but vulnerability. Adam understood the rules of the game instinctively. Billy seemed increasingly unsure whether he wanted to keep playing at all. In the heightened reality of daytime drama, initiative is seductive. A man who moves decisively commands attention, even when his motives are questionable. A man who waits risks becoming invisible. Sally has always respected power, not for its cruelty but for its capacity to protect and build. She admires competence, the ability to influence outcomes rather than merely endure them. Right now, Adam embodies those qualities more visibly than Billy does. That truth unsettles her because Adam's power is being wielded against her interests, yet it still resonates on a visceral level. The tension created by that contradiction is dangerous. Tension like that rarely remains static. It demands release, and release often takes forms that logic alone cannot prevent. Billy should have recognized the warning signs, not just in Sally's growing anxiety or her need for reassurance, but in the way the world around them was shifting. He should have understood that refusing to engage Victor was not a neutral stance but an abdication that left Sally exposed. By choosing not to confront Adam's attack on Abbott Communications, Billy implicitly allowed Adam to occupy the space of dominance in Sally's perception. He did not lose Sally in a single dramatic moment. He lost her gradually through silence, absence, and hesitation. Each unreturned call, each postponed decision, each rationalization for inaction chipped away at the foundation she was desperately trying to believe in. Sally's reaction to New Year's Eve was not immediate or overt. She did not wake up the next morning deciding to abandon Billy or rekindle anything with Adam. Instead, the night planted a seed of realization she could not ignore. She noticed how it felt to stand beside someone who moved through the world with certainty, even when that certainty was ruthless. She noticed how Billy's absence lingered in her mind far longer than Adam's presence should have. That imbalance frightened her. It forced her to confront the possibility that emotional safety is not just about kindness or understanding, but about shared momentum. A relationship cannot thrive when one person is fighting to hold ground while the other is stepping back from the battlefield. Adam, for his part, did not need to seduce or manipulate in obvious ways. His mere existence as an active force was enough. He did not apologize for following Victor's orders, nor did he pretend his actions were benign. That honesty, however brutal, carried its own form of integrity. Sally might despise what Adam was doing, but she could not deny that he believed in his choices and executed them without apology. Billy's moral hesitation, by contrast, left Sally feeling unsupported and uncertain. Morality without action offers little comfort when the consequences are public humiliation and professional vulnerability. The most painful irony is that Billy believes he is protecting something by holding back. He tells himself that restraint will prevent further damage, that engaging Victor directly would only escalate the conflict. What he fails to see is that the damage is already happening, and his inaction is compounding it. Sally does not need Billy to win every battle, but she needs to know he is willing to stand in the arena with her. By staying on the sidelines, Billy communicates that the risk is not worth it, that the cost of fighting is higher than the cost of losing. To Sally, that calculus feels like abandonment. As the days after New Year's Eve unfold, the emotional distance between Billy and Sally continues to widen, not through confrontation, but through quiet reassessment. Sally begins to question whether she has mistaken comfort for security, whether emotional sensitivity without resolve can ever sustain the life she wants to build. Billy senses something is wrong but remains trapped in his internal loop, convinced that time and patience will restore equilibrium. He does not yet understand that equilibrium has already shifted, that the scales are tilting away from him not because Adam is better, but because Adam is present in a way Billy is no longer capable of being. In Genoa City, relationships are not undone by a single betrayal, but by a series of moments where one person steps forward and the other steps back. New Year's Eve was one of those moments. It did not end anything outright, but it clarified a truth Billy has been avoiding. Power, initiative, and emotional availability are not abstract concepts. They are lived realities. Sally stands at the intersection of those realities now, torn between loyalty to a man who feels deeply and frustration with a man who refuses to act. If Billy does not awaken to what that night truly represented, he may soon discover that by choosing not to fight Victor Newman, he has already lost the most important battle of all. As these realizations settle in, Sally is forced into a reckoning that goes far beyond momentary doubt or fleeting insecurity. She has to ask herself whether she truly understands Billy Abbott at all, whether the man she believes she loves is the man who actually stands beside her when circumstances turn hostile. That question is not a philosophical exercise or a passing moment of introspection. It is a catalyst, and once it is asked honestly, it inevitably leads to decisions that alter the trajectory of her life. This is not a vague hint at future tension. It is a direct warning aimed squarely at the foundation of their relationship. Sally has built enough of her life on unstable ground to recognize the signs when they appear. When certainty gives way to hesitation, when reassurance must be requested instead of felt, something fundamental has already shifted. From that point forward, it would be entirely logical for Sally to begin considering self-preservation as a necessity rather than a betrayal. The question of whether she starts quietly preparing an exit strategy from Abbott Communications is not rooted in disloyalty, but in survival. Sally has learned, through hard experience, that blind faith is a luxury she cannot afford. She knows what it means to be collateral damage in other people's wars, and she recognizes how quickly power structures collapse when the person at the center refuses to defend them. It would be wise, almost inevitable, for her to start restructuring her position, protecting her interests, and ensuring that if Billy's world implodes, She does not go down with it. This would not be done dramatically or publicly. Sally has never needed spectacle to be effective. Any preparation would be subtle, calculated, and invisible until the moment it became necessary, a quiet reclaiming of agency in a situation where she increasingly feels powerless. Billy's pattern of self-destruction only accelerates this internal shift. He has always framed his withdrawal as growth, as maturity earned through painful lessons, but Sally is beginning to see it for what it really is. He convinces himself that disengaging from Victor is an act of self-preservation, that stepping away from conflict is the healthier choice. From his perspective, retreat equals control. From Sally's perspective, retreat looks like abandonment. While Billy believes he is saving himself from another devastating loss, Sally sees a man lowering his defenses while she remains under constant attack. That disconnect is not theoretical. It is lived and felt every day. And it is precisely that difference in perception that becomes the fracture neither of them can ignore much longer. The danger lies in how quickly that fracture can widen. Billy's habit of rationalizing inaction, of masking fear and exhaustion as wisdom, has consequences he refuses to fully confront. He believes that by not engaging Victor, he is preventing escalation. Sally understands that escalation is already happening, regardless of Billy's participation. Victor does not require consent to wage war, and Adam does not hesitate simply because Billy chooses restraint. In this environment, Billy's passivity does not neutralize threats, it invites them. Sally is left standing in the open, absorbing the impact of decisions she did not make and strategies she did not choose. Over time, that exposure breeds resentment, not because she expects perfection from Billy, but because she expects partnership. Ironically, the holidays only sharpen that contrast. To the outside world, Sally and Billy appear serene, even enviable. They host Victoria and the children. They play the roles of a warm, functional family unit. The setting is intimate, filled with laughter, shared meals, and the comforting illusion of domestic stability. It looks like everything Sally once dreamed of having, a life that feels rooted and secure. Yet beneath that carefully curated surface, Sally is acutely aware that something is wrong. The happiness feels staged, fragile, dependent on silence rather than truth. She recognizes that appearances can be deceiving because she has lived behind them before. And it is during these quiet moments, when nothing is overtly wrong, that her unease becomes impossible to dismiss. Sally has already said it out loud, even if she did not fully grasp the weight of her own words at the time. She needs this relationship to be real, not comfortable, not familiar, not temporarily soothing. Real in the sense that it can withstand pressure, conflict, and external threats without collapsing into avoidance. Billy, through his choices, is giving her every reason to doubt that reality. His emotional retreat, his refusal to confront Victor, his belief that disengagement equals growth all signal a man who is no longer willing to fight for the life he claims to want. Sally does not need grand gestures or constant reassurance, but she does need alignment. Right now, their visions of survival are moving in opposite directions. The more Sally reflects on this, the clearer it becomes that love alone cannot bridge that gap. Admiration fades when it is no longer supported by action. Trust erodes when protection is withheld. And loyalty begins to feel like a liability when it is not reciprocated with resolve. Sally is not plotting betrayal. She is assessing risk. She is not fantasizing about escape. She is preparing for the possibility that she will need one. That preparation is not an overreaction, but a rational response to patterns she recognizes all too well. Billy's internal struggle may be sincere, but sincerity does not shield her from the consequences of his decisions. As the holiday glow fades and reality reasserts itself, Sally stands at the edge of a choice she did not want to make. She can continue investing in a man who believes withdrawal is strength, or she can begin securing her own future in anticipation of a collapse she increasingly sees as inevitable. Billy remains unaware of how close he is to losing her, not because she has already left, but because she has begun thinking like someone who might have to. In relationships, that shift is often the point of no return. Sally Spectra understands that better than most. And unless Billy Abbott recognizes that his silence and hesitation are speaking louder than his intentions, he may soon discover that the woman standing beside him during the holidays has already started imagining a life beyond him.